This is the Mercedes-Benz EQE SUV. I could do an entire video just on the tech on this thing, but lucky for you, I'm going to do that and a whole lot more. But first, context. The EQE SUV is the fourth model from Mercedes that rides on their exclusive all-electric platform. The EQS, EQS SUV, and EQE sedan all came first. The EQE SUV is the smallest of those four. It gets a 119.3-inch wheelbase. It gets short front and rear overhangs. And if you were to slot this between the non-electric vehicles, it will go somewhere between the GLE and the GLS. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's take a look at it. It's got a predictable shape. It looks pretty much like a smaller EQS, not much by way of unique characteristics, but it's not super sedate. It's got a slight fastback roof style, so it looks a little more on the sporty and aerodynamic side of things. Mercedes always offers great paint choices, and the EQE is no exception. Their brown is killer. When you get into the interior, this is where things get a lot more interesting. So it has a super modern aesthetic in here. It's definitely lounge-feely. These seats are big and comfortable, and you do have a massage option on them up front. But when you get into the back, there's plenty of legroom in the seating for 5. You guys, it's pretty loungy and comfortable in here, just like all the modern concept cars have acclaimed, and here it is. Love it. The materials Mercedes have chosen are elegant and luxurious looking too. There's a neoprene derivative covering the dash that's excellent. Everything is tasteful and looks as expensive as the car is. You definitely look like you're getting what you paid for in here. The highlight of the interior has to be the massive OLED screen. The standard base model screen is impressive enough, but upgrade to the Hyper screen and this sucker stretches the entire span of the dash. It uses haptic feedback for controls, and get this, your passenger can watch a movie with headphones, and if the driver looks too much at that screen, it shuts off. It just knows you're looking. Or you can just pull over and watch a different movie on your own screen. Graphics and clarity are killer. Is it too much? I don't know, tell me in the comments. There are secondary controls on the steering wheel as well. Those are also haptic, but not overly sensitive where you can accidentally do something if you just sort of brush up against them. As far as interacting with the system, I do find that it's very easy to use. It's intuitive. If there is a layer, things are very easy to find. The one thing I did have a hard time finding was there is a speed limit warning that goes off and was ding, ding, ding. And so I did have to ask Mercedes how to do that because that was a little bit tricky. But once I found it, it made the driving experience so much better. Sometimes more alerts and alarms can frankly just be distracting and really take away from the driving experience. Mercedes goes out of its way to make you feel holistically comfortable. You can connect with music streaming platforms like Spotify or Apple Music, and they integrate right into the car. There are soundscapes that evoke all the feels of a forest or oceanside experience pumped through the standard 3D Burmeister audio system. The MBUX system is consistently being upgraded so it can understand specific commands, and you get over-the-air updates to stay current with the latest tech. Again, the MBUX system is not overly layered, and I have been using it for the past couple of days, and it's actually fairly easy to use. The one thing that they have added is something called zero layer, and that is a feature that will sort of put things that you've used over and over and over again, like right up at the top to do as options. So let's say I get in the car when I'm going home from work and I always call my husband, and the car will actually remember that and then offer that up to you. It's the same with charging. If you need a charging station, it will sort of automatically put those functions at the top of the screen. And let's face it, fewer layers is always better. I think that's a really nice function to be able to kind of have that at your disposal and readily if it's something that you do often. Another cool interior feature is the heat pump, which comes standard across the trim walk
and, like traditional heaters, pulls waste heat from the inverter and motor and uses that to heat the cabin, which is ridiculously quiet, I might add. So you're not using up precious battery to keep the cabin warm. Brilliant.
So always the biggest question for me, especially when it comes to driving EV, is it still Mercedes quality? There are a couple of things about that. I did have an opportunity to drive the vehicle with the air suspension, and to me, it almost felt too bouncy. It was too active. There was too much involvement with the car going on, especially when I was sitting in the right seat and we were going around some turns. I felt very sort of sloshy in the seat, and it felt like it was almost too comfortable, just too soft. I also will perhaps attribute that a little bit to the 22-inch wheels that we had on that particular vehicle, because right now I am in the regular suspension car, just the comfort suspension, and while I am feeling comfortable, I'm definitely not feeling that kind of floaty, bouncy, a lot of movement on the road when there are imperfections. When I'm driving a Mercedes, I do truly expect it to just be nice and smooth and comfortable. I'm not completely sold on that air suspension the way that it was tuned with those 22-inch wheels.
And while I prefer the standard spring suspension, I feel as though it's not completely dialed in either, especially when we're talking about the ride on an E-Class. I think Mercedes still has a fair bit of fine-tuning to do here.
One great thing about that air suspension is when you put it in off-road mode, it does lift the car up an inch, giving you more ground clearance.
I did get a last-minute chance to drive the 350 Plus on 21-inch tires, and it definitely helped, but I still feel like the engineers could tweak it a little bit more to help refine it and firm it up a bit.
When it comes to quickness, the EQE SUV definitely does deliver. If you get the base model 350 Plus, you're going to get 288 horsepower, 417 pound-feet of torque, and even though it's just one motor, you really do feel that instant acceleration, which is really terrific. But
if you opt for the dual motor 350 4MATIC, your horsepower stays the same, but that torque number increases.
If you upgrade to the 500 4MATIC, those numbers both jump pretty significantly. And wow, like you really do get terrific quick acceleration, nice and zippy for you. Mercedes claims that you will go 0 to 60 in that vehicle in 4.6 seconds.
Around turns, if you're on a smooth road, the EQE SUV feels decently behaved and carves nicely with its low center of gravity. But because of those issues with the suspension, it's not as well composed around turns on a rougher road. Yes, even in sport mode. The car feels like it undulates a lot laterally, and it felt very distracting to me. Again, from an E-designated Mercedes, I expect something a little bit more dialed in.
When it comes to stopping all of that power, you do get regenerative braking, and you get what I would say is pretty close to a true one-pedal experience. So if you put it on strong recuperation, when you pull your foot off of the throttle, it really does sort of throttle back on that accelerator. It depresses the brake pedal. So interestingly enough, if you do left foot brake, you'll feel the brake pedal depressing. But you can also put it into normal recuperation mode, which is a little sort of between absolutely none and full regen, which is kind of a nice happy medium if you don't like the sort of non-smooth, like stop and start feeling, while still keeping the vehicle as efficient as you possibly can. So I do like how Mercedes has calibrated the system, and I always like it when you have options when it comes to regen. As far as the natural braking feel, I mean, you know, you're depressing the brake, you are going through those two motors before you actually get to the brakes. So you really do have to put your foot into it if you have kind of an emergency situation, but it's not so distracting that I can't stand it.
In off-road mode, you can have the nannies on to prevent slip, helping with grip, but also limiting damage to terrain like wet grass or loose gravel. And with the nannies shut down, you get more wheel spin on a terrain like sand. And in an off-road situation like that, I really appreciate being able to adjust that regen braking so it's completely off and I can keep up momentum. Boy, I love how torque balance works differently for different terrain.
Maneuverability is always a big question when it comes to an SUV, and you do have optional rear wheel steering. It's up to 10 degrees in the rear wheels, and boy, it really does help when it comes to taking a sharp hairpin turn, which I am definitely doing in these small little village towns. Or if you're looking for a parking spot in a tiny little parking structure, it really is helpful.
The EQE can also park itself if you're not feeling up to the task.
Range on the 350 Plus tops out at 279 miles. If you opt for the 350 4MATIC, it will go down to 253 miles. And on the 500 4MATIC, you do get 269 miles of range. Now, all three of those, if you are on a level 2 charger, takes about 9.5 hours for a full charge. When you're using a fast charger, you can use up to a max 170 kilowatt hour charger and go from 10% to 80% in about 32 minutes. So that means if you're on a trip and you need just a little quick boost, maybe 100 miles, you can probably get that between like 10 and 15 minutes. It's not a lot of time. Also, the warranty on these batteries is 10 years and 155,000 miles.
The driver assistance features on the EQE might be the most impressive part of this car. It can literally help you do just about everything. It's got a distance assist and a stop and go assist that maintains speeds with not only the car in front of you, but also around turns, up hills, roundabouts, and junctions. It can anticipate them all.
There's a steering assist, there's a lane change assist. Both of those help you to stay in your lane. Those systems are great. Mercedes really does everything so smoothly. I mean, there are so many different things with the word assist in it. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And then there's another part of me that thinks, oh, I really do want to be doing a lot of this driving on my own. But the wonderful thing is you can turn them on, you can turn them off as needed or desired.
It also has something called Pre-Safe Plus and Pre-Safe Sound, which anticipates if you're going to be hit by another car and will give the driver a warning, allowing their body and specifically their hearing to prepare, which helps prevent hearing loss during accidents. Like I said up top, full of cool tech, folks. Other features include blind spot monitoring, speed limit assist and traffic recognition, active brake assist with cross-traffic warning. If the word assist is in a feature, it's in the EQE SUV.
A feature called Electric Intelligence Navigation will put together a route for me when I'm going on a road trip that will include charging stations. It will also take into account things like temperature, so whether I need to use the heater or the air conditioning, elevation changes, just in case I'm going up and I'm needing to use range, or I'm going downhill, I'm going to be able to regenerate a little bit to be able to take into account and fully maximize the range on the EQE. It's not quite as good as my co-driver Sedona, but it's the next best thing.
Part of that system is a 4x4 disconnect function that reads conditions and how much regen you're looking for, and when and where you don't need it, it will shift to a 4x2 setup to conserve power and extend range. And a feature called Electric Intelligent Recuperation virtually controls the regenerative braking component of the car, and if equipped with that 4x4 disconnect, to maximize range depending on terrain and elevation. Told ya, I could do a whole video on it.
Let's talk about pricing for a second. On the base model 350 Plus, entry level is $77,900. Now, maybe I'm jaded, but when it comes to the price of vehicles and how much you are getting in this particular car and the fact that it's an electric vehicle, for some reason that does not sound all that expensive to me. I don't know. Am I crazy? Tell me in the comments.
Move up the trim ladder to the EQE 350 4MATIC and it's the same price. Because remember, you get more torque and all-wheel drive, but less range, so fair trade. When you hit the 500 4MATIC, you're looking at an $89,500 starting price. If this category interests you but you're comparison shopping, try the BMW iX SUV or the Audi e-tron SUV. They're the most similar.
And of course, if you're looking to purchase, KBB can help you find a fair purchase price. Just click on the link above, and even on an expensive car, we can help you find a good deal. So much luxury, so much tech. Mercedes-Benz really is at the top of their game when it comes to electric vehicle design and engineering. It's really remarkable. If you are in the market for a luxury or high-end SUV that is an electric vehicle, then you've got to put the EQE SUV on your list.